Welcome back to Secrets Exposed. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. You're the reason these stories worth sharing. Tell us where you're watching from, city or country. We're amazed by how far these tales reach. To get daily new and amazing stories for you, subscribe our channel and press bell icon. All right, let's begin. Rain pressed against the windshield in rhythmic bursts as Captain Ethan Cole's cab rolled to a stop in front of his house. The porch light blinked weakly, fighting the storm. 8 months overseas had taught him how to read silence. This one wasn't peaceful. It was the kind that listened back. He stepped out, boots sinking into wet gravel, duffel slung over one shoulder. The air smelled of metal, mildew, and something sour that didn't belong to any home he remembered. He hesitated at the door. The welcome mat was gone. A single child's sneaker rested on the step, turned sideways as if dropped mid-run. His heartbeat slowed to the mechanical rhythm of training. Observe, assess, move. He turned the knob. Unlocked. Inside, the house exhaled neglect. Curtains half-drawn, dishes crusted gray, a television frozen on a static menu. Lily, he called softly, testing the walls for echo. No answer. Only the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint drip of a leak somewhere unseen. He set the duffel down and took a slow walk through the living room. Toys that used to form neat rows were scattered like evidence of a forgotten war. A drawing on the wall, crayon suns and stick figures labeled Mom and Trent, was missing Dad. His stomach knotted. He opened his mouth again, louder this time. Lily. A sound answered, but not a voice. A small metallic clink, then another, faint and rhythmic, coming from beneath the floorboards. The basement. Ethan's body reacted before thought. His left hand reached instinctively for a sidearm that wasn't there. His right found the light switch, dead. He pulled the phone from his pocket. The flashlight sliced a cone through the dark. The basement door resisted at first, swollen from dampness. When it gave, a breath of cold air rolled out carrying rust, dust, and a thin trace of urine. Concrete steps groaned under his boots as he descended, flashlight trembling with each pulse of his hand. The light found cardboard boxes, a broken tricycle, and then movement. In the far corner sat a girl curled small, knees to chest. Her hair clung to her forehead. Her nightgown hung in tatters. Around her neck blinked a tiny red light. Ethan stopped breathing. Lily. The flashlight caught her eyes, wide, glassy, too old for 8. She flinched at his voice, pressing her hands over her ears. The metallic clink came again. A short chain connected the collar to a loop anchored in the wall. He dropped to one knee, voice lowering to the steady tone he used on panicked civilians. Sweetheart, it's me. It's Dad. She blinked, uncertain, then whispered, raw and cracked, Daddy. He moved closer, slow enough that she could see every inch of his hands. Yeah, you're safe. I'm here. When he reached her, he unclipped the chain first, then gathered her in his arms. She weighed less than he remembered, fragile, trembling, cold through the thin fabric. She smelled of dust and fear. Her lips brushed his ear. He said, I have to bark for food. Ethan froze. The sentence felt unreal, words stitched from a nightmare. He pulled back enough to see her face. Who said that? Mom's boyfriend, she whispered. Trent. The name landed like shrapnel. He pressed her to his chest, rocking once, eyes burning. Over her shoulder, the flashlight beam caught the object lying on a nearby table. A black remote with rubber buttons, smeared with greasy fingerprints. The red light on the collar pulsed faster, like a heartbeat. Ethan thumbed the power switch and watched it die. The room fell quiet except for the rain outside. He held Lily tighter, whispering steady breaths against her hair until her trembling slowed. Above them, the house creaked. Somewhere a door closed, slow, deliberate. Ethan looked up toward the sound, every nerve drawing tight again. Whoever had locked his daughter down here might still be home. He set Lily behind him, rose silently to his full height, and listened. The rain masked smaller noises, but one thing was clear. The mission hadn't ended overseas. It had just begun in his own basement. Ethan froze on the final step, every instinct tuned to the faint creak above. The sound of shifting weight. Someone was still in the house. He motioned silently for Lily to stay put behind the water heater, raising one finger to his lips. Her frightened eyes followed him as he moved up the stairs, boot soles rolling quietly on the old wood. At the top, the living room stretched ahead, dim, cluttered, half-lit by the street lamp bleeding through the curtains. He scanned the room like a soldier sweeping a corridor. Nothing. The front door was closed, no wind. The noise had come from somewhere deeper, perhaps the kitchen. He advanced slowly, the phone's flashlight low to the ground. On the kitchen counter lay a half-eaten sandwich, a beer can, and a thick black remote with a cracked antenna. A faint smell of stale alcohol lingered. He wiped the remote's surface with his sleeve. Greasy fingerprints glimmered beneath the light. On the floor nearby, he noticed small scratches in the linoleum, drag marks leading toward the basement door. Whoever used that collar had done so more than once. Ethan's jaw flexed. He moved to the back window and peered through the blinds. The driveway was empty, no vehicles parked where his wife's SUV usually sat. A moment later, he found her keys tossed carelessly on the counter, along with a folded receipt from a bar, time-stamped 2 hours earlier. She wasn't home. Whoever had been here might have left in her car. He turned back toward the basement. Lily had crept halfway up the stairs, hugging the rail, eyes darting. "Daddy, is he gone?" She whispered. "Yeah, sweetheart. You're safe now." He kept his tone low, calm, because panic would only build hers. "Let's get you some water." He guided her into the living room, wrapped her in a blanket, and handed her a glass from the counter. Her hands trembled so badly the rim clinked against her teeth. "It's okay," he murmured. "You're home." Her gaze flicked to the collar lying on the coffee table where he had set it. The light on its side blinked in intervals, still charged, still functional. "Don't touch it," she whispered quickly, pulling the blanket closer. "If it's on red, it means it hurts." Ethan crouched beside it. "Who gave this to you?" She hesitated, then whispered. "Trent did. He said Mommy knows. He said I forget how to behave when you're gone." The word struck harder than any explosion he'd ever heard. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Amber's last message was from 3 days ago. "Hope you're safe." No mention of Lily, no mention of trouble. He stood, scanning the shelves, the tables, everything he'd once known. It was all the same and completely different, pictures of Amber and a man who wasn't him, laughing at a picnic. Lily wasn't in any of them. He picked up one frame, stared at it for a moment, and then set it face down. The phone buzzed suddenly, an incoming call. "Amber." He answered, voice even. "Where are you?" Her tone was airy, almost defensive. "Ethan, you're back." I was on a call. "I'm out getting food for tomorrow." "What?" "Because I'm home," he said quietly, eyes locked on the collar. "And Lily's in the basement." A pause. Then sharp breath. "What do you mean?" She's fine. She was supposed to be asleep in her room. She was chained," he cut in, "with a shock collar." Amber's voice cracked. "That's not. Trent said it was just a trainer." "I didn't." He ended the call. Her excuses didn't matter right now. Ethan grabbed the remote and the collar, placed them on the kitchen table, and took photos from every angle. Years of field reporting had taught him, document everything before it disappears. Lily had drifted toward the couch, half asleep, thumb curled against her cheek. Ethan tucked the blanket tighter around her and turned off the TV's blue flicker. The silence after the static felt heavier than any battlefield quiet. He went back to the basement doorway. On the wall near the chain's anchor, small red marks dotted the concrete, fingerprints smeared by panic. He swallowed hard. Whatever had happened here hadn't been a single night of cruelty. It was a pattern. He shut off the basement light, locking the door behind him. Then he reached for his duffel, unzipped the side pouch, and pulled out a rugged satellite phone, the one he'd sworn never to use again unless the situation was life or death. He stared at it for a long moment, thumb hovering over the single number saved under hail. Outside, thunder rolled again. Lily stirred on the couch. Ethan's hand tightened around the phone. "Not yet," he murmured. "First, I want to see everything." He turned back to the living room, scanning for anything else he'd missed. Tomorrow, the truth would come out, piece by piece. But tonight, he needed to stay awake. Because monsters didn't always live overseas. Sometimes, they live in your own house and called it home. Ethan sat at the edge of the couch long after the rain had slowed to a drizzle, watching the reflection of the streetlight slide across the living room window. The house felt smaller now, like its walls were holding their breath. Lily slept curled under the blanket beside him, her little chest rising and falling unevenly. Every few minutes, she whimpered and twitched, as though the collar's memory still burned against her skin. He couldn't sleep, not after what he'd seen. He needed to know how far it went, how long it had been happening. He walked into the kitchen, where Amber's phone still lay on the counter, screen cracked, the faint glow of a notification pulsing beneath the glass. He hesitated, then unlocked it with her birthday. The passcode hadn't changed. Messages scrolled upward, hundreds of missed calls, mostly from him, unanswered. Mixed between them were photos of dinner plates, nights out, and a smiling man with a beer in his hand. Trent, the same face Lily had drawn with thick black crayon strokes in her school notebook, calling it Mom's friend. Ethan clicked the video folder. The first file opened automatically, time-stamped from 2 weeks ago. Amber's voice, laughing, slightly slurred. "He's fine, right?" "He's not crying." The camera panned. Lily sat on the floor wearing the collar, arms around her knees, eyes red. Trent's voice came from behind the lens. "Go on, Bark. Show Daddy's girl how we train." Ethan's jaw locked. The man laughed, cruel and careless. Then Amber's face appeared in frame, tipsy and detached, sipping wine. "That's enough," she said faintly, but didn't stop him. Ethan paused the video and stared at the frozen frame. His daughter's fear lived in those pixels, something you couldn't undo. His reflection on the dark screen looked like another ghost in the room. He scrolled through the rest. Short clips, photos of Lily cleaning floors, sitting in corners, 4 smiles. The evidence built like bricks in a wall he hadn't known existed. His hand trembled. He wasn't just angry. He was humiliated. The man who'd fought insurgents halfway across the world had lost the war inside his own house. He took a deep breath and exhaled through his nose, grounding himself the way the army taught him. Control the heartbeat before the hand. He copied the videos to his own phone, transferring them one by one. The sound of the file transfer beeped quietly in the dark kitchen. Each chime another heartbeat closer to something irreversible. When he finished, he set Amber's phone back where he'd found it. He didn't delete anything. He wanted her to see that he knew. Ethan poured a glass of water, but his hands shook too much to drink. His mind played the words again, bark for food. The phrase felt alien, obscene. Who would even think of something like that? He turned the faucet off and leaned on the sink, head bowed. On the counter, a magnet held one of Lily's old drawings, a stick family of 3 holding hands under a bright blue sky. Someone, maybe Trent, had drawn a thick black line through the father figure. Ethan's throat tightened. He traced the ink with his finger, then ripped the paper off the fridge and folded it into his pocket. Behind him, the floor creaked. Lily had woken up, eyes half open. "Daddy." "Yes, sweetheart. Are we moving again?" He kneeled beside her. "Not yet, but we'll go somewhere better soon." She nodded sleepily. "Can we bring my drawings?" "All of them," he said softly. She drifted back in his sleep, clutching the edge of his sleeve. Ethan sat beside her until her breathing evened out. Then he pulled out the satellite phone from his duffel and placed it on the table. The device was heavy, scratched, but still alive. One number programmed inside. He didn't call yet. Instead, he opened a small locked box from the bottom of his duffel and took out a flash drive, one he'd used for classified reports years ago. He transferred the copied videos onto it, labeling the file L evidence. The act was deliberate, methodical, the kind of calm that comes right before action. Outside, thunder rumbled again, faint and distant. He glanced through the window toward the empty street, where puddles reflected the amber glow of the streetlight. A faint vibration hummed through the glass. An engine somewhere down the road, idling too long. Ethan lowered the blinds. He sat back, staring at the collar on the table, the remote beside it, the photos on his phone. There was no going back now. Tomorrow would not be about conversation. It would be about consequence. He ran a hand through his hair, the calm settling over him like armor. Then he whispered to himself, You hurt the wrong kid. Upstairs, a phone began to ring faintly in the master bedroom. Amber's voice echoed through the answering machine, nervous and guilty. Trent, don't come back tonight. He's home. Ethan looked toward the stairs, eyes hardening. For the first time since he walked through the door, he smiled, cold, certain, patient. The storm hadn't ended. It was only moving inside. The next morning crept in gray and heavy. Dawn light crawled through the curtains, thin as smoke. The air in the house felt stale, thick with the kind of silence that comes after a confession you can't take back. Ethan hadn't slept. He sat at the kitchen table, elbows on his knees, the satellite phone in front of him. It waited there like a loaded weapon. Lily was still asleep on the couch, curled under his jacket. He'd barely moved all night, afraid to disturb the fragile peace she'd found. He watched her small hand twitch in her dreams, fingers brushing against the blanket's edge. She murmured once, something that sounded like, "Daddy, don't go," and his chest tightened. He checked the time. 6:12. The base would already be active by now. Men training, engines rumbling, radio chatter crackling. Somewhere in that noise was Sergeant Marcus Hale, the only man Ethan trusted completely. He picked up the phone and stared at the single number saved under Hale, OSI. He hesitated. Making this call meant crossing a line he couldn't uncross. He'd sworn to never use that contact unless there was no other option. But this wasn't about war anymore. It was about home. He pressed the call button. The signal clicked 3 times before a deep voice answered. "Cole." "Yeah." Ethan's voice came out low, rough, the sound of a man balancing between rage and control. "I need a favor." There was a pause, a rustle of paper, then the calm precision of a soldier already taking notes. "Give me a name." "Trent Lawson. Civilian. 35, maybe 36. Lives here with my wife and kid." Another pause. "What's the situation?" Ethan glanced at the collar on the table. The red light blinked faintly, like an eye watching. "He hurt my daughter. Physically. I've got proof, videos, photos, everything." The line went quiet. Then Marcus spoke, voice like gravel. "You want him gone?" Ethan swallowed. "I want him stopped. Legally, if possible. But fast. Before he knows I'm home. I can't move OSI on a domestic without federal tags." Marcus said slowly, thinking aloud. "But if he's crossed state lines, or used devices shipped through military channels." "He did," Ethan said, remembering the receipt on the counter. "He ordered a training collar using my home address. My name's still on the lease. That's fraud and child abuse." "Enough. That'll do." Papers rustled again. "Send me everything you've got. We'll classify it under protective action. No one will trace it back to you." Ethan exhaled for the first time in hours. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Marcus said. "You'll hear cars before you see them. Keep the kids safe. We'll handle the rest." The call ended. The phone screen went dark, leaving Ethan staring at his own reflection in the black glass. He wasn't sure if he'd just asked for help or vengeance. He transferred the video files onto the encrypted channel Marcus sent. Each upload blinked blue as it completed, the digital heartbeat of justice or retribution. He didn't care which. By the time the last file sent, Lily had woken up. She rubbed her eyes and sat up, voice small. "Daddy, what are you doing?" He forced a soft smile. "Just fixing something that's broken, sweetheart." She nodded, still half asleep. "Can we have pancakes later?" "Of course," he said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "You'll get all the pancakes you want." The words almost broke him. He stepped outside for air. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles that mirrored the pale sky. The street was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. A neighbor across the road watered her plants, oblivious. Life looked normal here, like nothing monstrous could happen behind these fences. But monsters didn't hide under beds. They blended in, smiled at barbecues, waved at mailmen. He heard an engine 2 streets over, deep professional. Not a local sound. He checked his watch. 7 o'clock. Marcus didn't waste time. He went back inside. Lily was drawing at the table, crayons spread everywhere. Her picture showed a big blue sky again, a yellow house, and a stick figure man with a uniform beside a smaller figure holding hands. No collar this time. She looked up and smiled shyly. "Is this us?" he asked. She nodded. You're the tall one. Ethan's throat ached. It's perfect. A knock sounded on the door. Two short, one long. Not a neighbor's knock. Ethan's pulse quickened. He moved Lily gently to the back hallway and whispered, "Stay here and don't come out until I call you." He opened the door halfway. A tall man in a plain jacket stood there, eyes sharp, stance military, even in civilian clothes. "Hail," Ethan said quietly. Marcus gave a single nod. "Got your file. We're set." His gaze shifted past Ethan into the dim house. "She's okay." "She will be." Marcus reached into his coat and slid a small envelope onto the counter. "Official paperwork will look like a missing person report. Unofficially, he's already on a watch list. You'll get closure soon." Ethan exhaled. "Just make sure he never touches another kid." Marcus's expression hardened. "He won't." The men stood in silence, two soldiers who understood that justice didn't always wear a uniform. When Marcus left, Ethan closed the door and leaned his forehead against it. Lily peeked from the hallway. "Daddy? Who was that?" "Just an old friend," he said softly. She smiled, trusting him completely. And for the first time since coming home, Ethan felt like maybe he could breathe again. Outside, thunder rolled far away, but closer than before. Something was coming. And this time, Ethan wouldn't run from it. The morning crawled by in uneasy stillness. Every sound in the house felt louder than it should. The hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, the whisper of Lily's crayons brushing across paper. Ethan made her breakfast, though neither of them ate much. She drew quietly at the table while he sat opposite her, pretending to read the news on his phone, but really watching the street through the blinds. Marcus had said to expect movement. "You'll hear cars before you see them." Ethan replayed those words again and again. The distant growl of an engine made his pulse jump each time, but the sounds always passed. Around noon, a car finally slowed near the driveway. Ethan stood, instinctively shielding Lily from view. But when he looked through the curtain, he saw not a convoy, just a blue sedan. His wife, Amber, stepped out. She froze when she saw his uniform jacket hanging over the porch rail. Then she spotted him through the glass and hesitated, her keys trembling in her hand. Ethan opened the door before she could knock. For a long second, neither spoke. The silence between them was filled with months of distance, lies, and everything unsaid. "You're home," she managed. "I am." His tone was flat. "Where's Trent?" Amber looked away, pushing her wet hair behind her ear. "He left last night. Said he'd be gone for a few days. Work trip or something." Ethan studied her, dark circles under her eyes, lipstick smeared as if she'd put on in the car. "You're lying." Her voice cracked. "Ethan, please. You don't understand." "I understand more than you think," he said, stepping aside, just enough to reveal Lily sitting at the table, coloring in silence. Amber's breath hitched. "Sweetheart," she whispered. Lily turned her head slightly, but didn't get up. She clutched her crayon tighter. "You let him hurt me," she said without looking at her mother. Amber's knees weakened. "Lily, no, it's not. He said it was just discipline. I didn't." Ethan's voice cut through like a blade. "Stop." He pointed toward the kitchen table, where the shot collar and remote lay side by side, silent and accusing. "You knew about it. You lived here. Don't insult her by pretending you didn't see." Amber's lip trembled. "I was scared, Ethan. You don't know what he's like when he drinks. He said he'd take her if I told you. And you believed him?" She started crying quietly, arms crossed over her chest. "I thought I could keep her safe if I just kept him calm." Ethan's expression didn't change. "You kept him comfortable. There's a difference." He walked to the counter and poured a glass of water, the movement slow, deliberate. "Do you have any idea what she's been through?" Amber shook her head, tears streaking her cheeks. "I didn't mean for her to go that far. I just thought it was training." "Training?" His voice hardened. "He made her bark for food, Amber." The words seemed to suck the air out of the room. Amber covered her mouth with both hands. "Oh my God." For a moment, Ethan almost felt pity. Then the image of Lily in the basement burned it away. He set the glass down. "You're going to tell me everything. Every detail. How long, what he did, what you saw." Amber hesitated, then nodded. Between sobs, she told him how Trent had moved in 6 months ago, how the drinking started, how he became controlling, locking doors, setting rules, calling Lily the problem. He'd taken over finances, her phone, even her car keys. The caller had come 2 weeks ago, disguised as a behavior aide. When she protested, he laughed. I was going to leave, she whispered, voice breaking. But every time I packed a bag, he'd threaten to call child services and say I was unfit. I thought if I just waited. Ethan turned away, gripping the counter to keep from shaking. You waited while he tortured her. Amber sobbed harder, sinking into a chair. I didn't know what to do. He stared at her for a long time, then spoke quietly. You had a phone. She flinched. Lily peeked from the hallway, small and pale. Daddy. Ethan softened instantly. It's okay, sweetheart. Go finish your drawing in your room. She obeyed, walking quickly down the hall. When the sound of her footsteps faded, he faced Amber again. You're going to tell the truth when the investigators come. No stories, no excuses. If you protect him, I'll make sure you answer for it. Amber nodded through tears. What are you going to do? Nothing you need to worry about, he said quietly. As if on cue, the sound of distant engines rose, a low, synchronized hum. Amber looked toward the window. What's that? Ethan glanced outside. 2 dark SUVs rolled past the street corner, slowing for just a second before disappearing around the bend. Friends, he said. Amber's face drained of color. Ethan, what did you do? He met her gaze, calm and cold. I made a call. The clock ticked louder. Rain began again, tapping lightly on the roof. Somewhere out there, justice was already moving, quiet, precise, unstoppable. Amber sank into silence, staring at the collar on the table, as if it were proof of a crime she'd committed herself. Ethan said nothing more. He simply stood there, waiting for the storm to finish what it had started. The rain returned by evening, whispering against the windows like a secret no one wanted to hear. The house was dim except for a single lamp near the couch, casting long, tired shadows over the walls. Ethan sat silently beside it, his elbows on his knees, watching the storm blur the world outside. Amber was upstairs, pacing in the hallway. Every creak of the floorboards betrayed her nerves. Downstairs, Lily lay asleep again on the couch, one hand still clutching the stuffed bear Ethan had found buried under a pile of dirty laundry earlier that afternoon. The bear's ear was torn, but she held it like something sacred. The clock hit 8 p.m. Then came the sound Marcus had promised, the quiet rumble of synchronized engines, low and steady, like thunder made of steel. Ethan stood, went to the window, and peered through the curtains. 2 unmarked SUVs rolled slowly down the street, headlights off, moving like predators through tall grass. They stopped half a block away. Amber's voice drifted down the stairs, tight with fear. Ethan, what's happening? Who are they? He didn't answer. He reached for his phone instead. The screen blinked once with a new message. Stay inside. We have eyes on target. No signature, but he didn't need one. He turned off the lamp. The house fell into a gray hush. Only the ticking clock remained. A minute passed. Then another. Then 3 sharp knocks at the door. Not frantic, not polite. Deliberate. Amber froze on the steps. Is that them? She whispered. Ethan didn't move right away. He studied the shadow under the door. 2 sets of boots, black, motionless. He stepped closer, calm and certain, and opened it just enough for the light to spill across the porch. Trent stood there. His hair was wet, his jacket soaked through, and his smile, a crooked, mean thing, hung on his face like a wound that refused to heal. Well, he said, voice slurred, look who decided to come home early. Ethan didn't flinch. Get off my porch. Trent laughed, shaking his head. This your big soldier routine? Thought you'd scare me. He leaned forward, breath heavy with beer. She called me, you know, your wife. Begged me not to tell you what she did while you were gone. Amber gasped softly behind Ethan. That's not true. Trent raised a finger. Quiet, sweetheart. Grown-ups are talking. Ethan's eyes didn't leave his. You're done talking. Trent smirked, brushing past the doorframe. Or what? You'll arrest me? You're not in uniform anymore, Captain. Ethan didn't answer. He just stepped aside, slow enough to make Trent turn his head in confusion. From the corner of the street came the faint crunch of tires on wet gravel. 2 men in plain jackets approached the house, steady, precise. Trent noticed them just as Ethan's phone buzzed again. He read the single word on the screen, Now. Trent frowned. Who the hell? Step outside, Ethan said quietly. Trent blinked. Why? Because if you don't, Ethan said, voice flat and certain, they'll come in. The color drained from Trent's face. He turned toward the door just as the two men reached the porch. One flashed a badge, so fast it was barely visible. The other rested a hand on Trent's shoulder. Trent Lawson? Yeah, who's asking? You're wanted for questioning under federal order. Step outside. What order? I haven't done. Before he could finish, one of the agents produced a folded document, its header visible in the porch light. Department of Defense, Office of Special Investigations. Trent's voice wavered. This is insane. Step outside. The agent repeated, firmer this time. Ethan stood motionless, hands at his sides. Amber had come halfway down the stairs, gripping the railing so tightly her knuckles whitened. Lily stirred on the couch, rubbing her eyes. Daddy. Ethan turned his head, just enough to see her. It's okay, sweetheart. Go back to sleep. She obeyed, curling into the blanket again, too tired to understand the storm outside wasn't just weather anymore. Trent tried one last protest. You can't take me. You've got no. The agent interrupted, calm but final. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. They guided him off the porch, wrists restrained, voice muffled by the rain. The SUV's doors opened without a sound. Within seconds, he was inside one of them, swallowed by the dark. Amber stood frozen, trembling. Ethan, what did you do? He didn't look at her. I told you. I made a call. The agents gave a brief nod as they passed. No words exchanged, just understanding. One slipped a sealed envelope onto the porch table before heading back to the vehicles. When the engines faded, the neighborhood fell quiet again, as if nothing had happened. Amber sank to the floor, sobbing into her hands. This is going to ruin us. Ethan glanced at the envelope, picked it up, and opened it. Inside was a single line written in familiar handwriting. Target secured. Custody sealed. No further contact. H. He folded the note carefully, slid it into his pocket, and looked toward the hallway where Lily slept. It's over, he said softly, more to himself than anyone else. Amber shook her head. You don't understand. He had connections, Ethan. He'll come back. Ethan turned toward her, eyes cold and steady. No, he said quietly. He won't. Outside, the rain eased into silence. The world held still again, just long enough for Ethan to realize how much damage peace could hide. He closed the door, locked it, and exhaled through his teeth. Some wars ended on foreign soil. Others ended right at your front door. Morning came slow, pale, and heavy. The storm had finally passed, but the silence it left behind was almost worse. No birds, no traffic, just a hollow calm that made the whole street feel staged, like the world was pretending nothing had happened. Ethan stood by the window, coffee gone cold in his hand. The SUVs were long gone. Only two wet tire tracks remained on the road, fading into the distance. He'd been standing there for nearly an hour, waiting for the reality of last night to sink in. It hadn't. Behind him, Amber moved through the kitchen like a ghost, making breakfast she didn't eat. Every time the floor creaked, she flinched. Every time Ethan turned, she looked away. Between them stretched a silence thick enough to choke on. Finally, she spoke, her voice small and shaky. Ethan, what exactly did they do to him? He didn't answer at first. He just kept watching the window, the steam from his mug curling upward like smoke from a distant fire. You don't need to know, he said at last. That's not an answer. She stepped closer, her bare feet padding softly on the tile. If they hurt him, you'll be dragged into it too. You think this ends clean? You think the government does favors for free? Ethan turned then, and the look in his eyes made her take a step back. You think this was a favor? He hurt my daughter, Amber. He chained her. He made her afraid to breathe. There's no version of this that's clean. Her lip trembled. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. His tone stayed low but sharp. You meant to keep quiet. To survive. You let him think he was safe in my house. Amber's shoulders sagged. I just wanted him gone. I thought maybe if he saw you, he'd leave. I didn't think. Ethan cut her off. You didn't think. That's the problem. The clock ticked loud between them. Lily's footsteps pattered from down the hall. She appeared in the doorway, her stuffed bear dangling from one hand. Is Mommy in trouble? Amber blinked, caught off guard. No, baby, no. Ethan crouched and met Lily's eyes. No one's in trouble right now. We're just talking. Lily looked from one to the other. Is the bad man gone? Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Yes, he's gone for good. She smiled faintly, small, uncertain, but enough to break the tension for a moment. Can we go to the park later? Yeah, Ethan said softly. After breakfast. She nodded and patted back down the hall. When she was gone, Amber let out a long, shaking breath. What happens now? Ethan stared at the wall for a moment, then spoke. Now we rebuild. For her. You'll tell the truth when people ask. Every detail. You don't lie for him anymore. Amber rubbed her temples. They're going to question me. Aren't they? They'll question both of us. And what if they find out what you did? Ethan finally met her gaze again. Then I'll live with it. But you won't lie to save me either. Amber blinked hard, then nodded. She didn't argue. Maybe because she knew he was right. He took a sip of his cold coffee, grimaced, and set it down. I'm calling someone from the base, he said. A friend. He knows family law. We'll start the custody process for Lily today. Amber looked up sharply. You're taking her away from me? Not away, he said quietly. Just safe. Amber's voice broke. Ethan, please, she's all I have. Then start acting like it. She didn't respond. She just turned toward the sink, shoulders trembling, tears falling silently into the running water. The phone on the table buzzed. Ethan picked it up. A message from Marcus. Package delivered. Case sealed. You're clear. He stared at it for a long time. Clear. The word felt wrong. Nothing about this was clear. Not yet. Outside, a police cruiser rolled slowly down the street, tires crunching over the drying gravel. The officer glanced at their house, then kept driving. Probably routine. But Amber froze when she saw it. They're going to come here, aren't they? Ethan nodded. Eventually, she wiped her face. What do I tell them? The truth. Amber laughed bitterly. The truth will destroy me. Ethan leaned forward, his tone low, deliberate. The truth already did. She stopped moving. He picked up the collar from the table and dropped it into a plastic evidence bag, sealing it with a zip. You'll give this to them when they come, he said, and you'll tell them exactly what he did. No editing, no softening. Amber stared at the bag. The blinking red light on the collar had finally died, but it still looked alive somehow, like it was holding on to every scream it had caused. Ethan, she whispered, what if they ask about you? He looked at her for a long moment, then turned toward the window. Then I'll tell them I did what I had to do. For a moment, the house was silent again. Then Lily's laughter floated faintly from her room, soft, real, fragile. Amber covered her mouth, crying quietly. Ethan closed his eyes and exhaled through his nose. The sound of his daughter's laughter was the only proof that what he'd done, what he had to do, was worth it. But even as he stood there, the uneasy thought lingered in the back of his mind. In a world like this, peace was never permanent. And sometimes justice had its own price. By the next afternoon, the illusion of calm had already begun to crumble. The police came quietly. No sirens, no lights, just two detectives in plain suits walking up the path with clipboards and tired eyes. Ethan saw them from the kitchen window and wasn't surprised. Marcus had warned him this part would come. He told Lily to stay in her room and handed her the stuffed bear. Keep drawing, he said softly. Don't open the door for anyone but me. She nodded, trusting him without question. Amber sat on the couch, pale and shaking. Ethan, she whispered, they'll think we did something. He looked at her calmly. We didn't, but they'll still ask. A knock sounded, measure professional. Ethan opened the door before the second came. Captain Cole, the taller detective asked, flashing a badge. Detective Rowan, this is my partner, Ms. Vega. We'd like to ask a few questions about Trent Lawson. Ethan nodded once. Come in. They stepped inside, eyes scanning the room the way trained investigators do, cataloging everything silently. Vega's gaze lingered on the collar in the plastic evidence bag on the table. Mind if we sit? Ethan gestured to the chairs. Go ahead. Rowan flipped open his notepad. You reported an incident last night? I didn't report anything. Ethan said. But I assume you're here because someone else did. Rowan gave a small nod. A neighbor mentioned seeing black vehicles near your house around 9 p.m., said there might have been an altercation. There wasn't, Ethan replied. Just a family matter. Vega glanced at Amber. Ma'am, would you like to tell us your version? Amber swallowed hard. Trent lived here for a while. My husband was deployed. I made mistakes. I let him move in. He started changing, controlling things. Her voice wavered. Then he hurt my daughter. Vega's tone softened. How old is she? 8. Rowan's eyes flicked to Ethan. And you have proof of this. Ethan reached into his duffel and slid the flash drive across the table. Videos. Found them on Amber's phone. Rowan studied him. You seem prepared. I was in the army, Ethan said evenly. We're trained to document everything. Vega took the drive carefully, sealing it into an evidence pouch. And Mr. Lawson? When did you last see him? Ethan leaned back. He came here last night. He was drunk. Threatened us. Rowan scribbled notes. And then he left. That's it. Ethan met his gaze steadily. That's it. Vega tilted her head slightly, testing his composure. You didn't call the police? No. Why not? Because I was protecting my daughter, and I'd already made sure he wouldn't come back. Rowan paused his writing. What does that mean exactly? Ethan didn't blink. It means I called someone who could keep him away. Legally. The detectives exchanged a glance, silent communication that said they weren't sure whether to push harder or not. Rowan finally asked, Do you know where Lawson is now? Ethan shook his head. No, but wherever he is, I doubt he's enjoying it. Vega watched him for another beat, then closed her notebook. We may need to speak with your daughter later, with a child advocate present. You'll get her statement, Ethan said. But not today. She's still recovering. Rowan stood. That's fair. For what it's worth, Captain, we've seen the kind of cases that don't end clean. This one smells like it's already been scrubbed. Ethan gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. Then you understand. Rowan's eyes narrowed slightly, as if searching for something behind that calm. But whatever he saw, he didn't press. We'll be in touch. When they left, Amber collapsed into a chair, burying her face in her hands. They don't believe you, she said, voice muffled. They don't need to, Ethan replied. They just need to close their report. He picked up the evidence bag with the collar and handed it to her. They'll ask for this next. Make sure they get it. It's your turn to tell the truth. Amber nodded weakly. What if they find out about Marcus? About the call? They won't, Ethan said. That part doesn't exist. He walked to the window again. Across the street, a dark sedan idled briefly before driving away. Not the police. Not neighbors. Something else. His instincts prickled. He knew a surveillance pattern when he saw one. He closed the curtains slowly, thoughtful. Maybe Marcus hadn't told him everything. Maybe the operation wasn't over yet. Behind him, Amber whispered, Ethan, what if he's not gone? What if they're lying to you? He turned toward her, expression unreadable. Then I'll finish it myself. Amber's breath caught. You can't mean. He held up a hand, cutting her off. Go upstairs. Stay with Lily. She hesitated, then obeyed. Ethan remained by the window, the storm clouds returning in the distance, rolling low and heavy across the horizon. For the first time since Trent's removal, doubt flickered in his chest. Not fear, but the unsettling thought that justice might not stay buried. He opened the envelope Marcus had left again and studied the handwriting. Target secured. Something about the phrasing gnawed at him. Not arrested. Not safe. Just secured. He folded the note back into his pocket. Outside, thunder murmured again, soft but closer than it should have been. The day dragged into a tense, gray evening. The rain had stopped, but the sky looked bruised, heavy and low, like it hadn't decided whether to break again. Ethan stood in the living room, staring at the collar's empty spot on the table. The police had taken it earlier, promising to follow the evidence. He doubted it would ever see a courtroom. Cases like this never really did. Amber sat in the armchair, motionless, a cold mug of tea cupped between her hands. She hadn't spoken much since the detectives left. Lily was upstairs, humming softly to herself while coloring. Her voice drifted faintly down the hallway like a ghost trying to sound alive. Ethan's phone buzzed on the counter. No name, just a block number. He hesitated, then answered, "Cole." The voice on the other end was Marcus's, steady, clipped, and unusually quiet. "We got a problem." Ethan straightened. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that breathes." A cold chill ran through his spine. "You're saying he's alive?" Marcus exhaled through static. "He shouldn't be." The transfer was clean, but the van carrying him to the holding facility was found empty this morning. No signs of struggle, no GPS interference. Just gone. Ethan's mind flashed through images, the SUVs, the agents, the quiet efficiency. "You lost him." "I don't lose people, Ethan," Marcus said, his voice lowering. "Which means someone helped him. Someone high enough to wipe the records." "Then he's coming back," Ethan murmured. "Maybe not yet. But if he does, you'll know before anyone. Keep your house locked. Keep your daughter close." The line went dead before Ethan could reply. He stood there, motionless, the silence pressing in on him. Amber looked up, seeing the color drain from his face. "What is it?" He pocketed the phone. "Nothing you need to worry about." She wasn't convinced. "Ethan, please." He cut her off with a look. "Just stay inside." She hesitated, then nodded and turned back toward the hallway. But he could tell she was shaking. As night fell, Ethan checked every window, every door. He moved like a soldier again, methodical, quiet, scanning corners, listening to the rhythm of the house. Nothing felt right. The air was too still. The hum of the refrigerator too loud. Even the shadows seemed to shift when he turned away. Around 11 o'clock, he finally sat in the armchair facing the front door, the old instincts fully awake now. He rested his hand near the small pistol locked in a case beside him. He hadn't wanted to bring it out, but tonight felt wrong. Upstairs, a faint noise made him look up, a floorboard creaking where no one should be walking. Amber had gone to bed an hour ago, and Lily's room was at the other end of the hall. He rose silently, stepping over the rug to muffle his movement. The stairs groaned once under his weight. He stopped halfway, listening. Another sound, a whisper, then a soft click, like a window latch being forced open. Ethan's pulse steadied, the kind of calm that only came when danger finally showed its face. He reached the top of the stairs and moved toward Lily's room. The door was slightly ajar. He pushed it open. Lily slept peacefully, her nightlight painting the walls in a warm glow. Nothing seemed disturbed, until his eyes caught the thin, muddy footprint near the window. His heart froze. He stepped closer. The window was open half an inch, the lock broken clean off. He scanned the yard below. Empty, but the grass glistened with fresh footprints leading toward the tree line. Behind him, a soft creak came from the hallway. Ethan turned sharply. Nothing there. Just the long shadow of the hallway mirror stretching across the floor. Then, faintly, his phone buzzed again in his pocket. A message. No name. Just 3 words. "You didn't finish." His breath caught. The text disappeared before he could screenshot it. Self-deleting encryption. Someone was toying with him. He checked the window again. A single object sat on the sill. A cheap dog tag, scratched and tarnished. It wasn't his. The name etched faintly across it read T. Lawson. Amber's voice broke the silence from down the hall. "Ethan." He turned. "Stay in your room," he said sharply. "What's wrong?" "Do it now." She froze, reading the look on his face, then obeyed. Ethan locked Lily's window tight, then carried her, still half asleep, into his room, laying her gently on the bed. He shut the blinds, checked his weapon, and dimmed the light. Outside, a car engine rumbled once in the distance, then cut off. Headlights briefly swept across the living room curtains, then vanished. He waited. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. But when he checked the door's peephole a minute later, his blood ran cold. A folded photograph lay on the porch, just a corner of it visible under the light. He opened the door slowly and picked it up. The picture showed Lily, sitting at the kitchen table earlier that morning, coloring with her crayons. It had been taken from outside the window. His hands tightened until the paper crumpled. He didn't call Marcus. Not yet. Because now it wasn't about finding Trent. It was about finishing what should have been finished last night. He locked the door, checked his sidearm, and whispered under his breath, "You made one mistake. You came back." Thunder rolled again, far away but growing closer. And Ethan Cole knew one thing for certain. This war wasn't over. The house sat in silence, holding its breath. Every creak of the wood and whisper of wind felt amplified. Ethan stood by the window, the crumpled photograph still in his hand. The image of Lily, his daughter, caught in an unguarded moment, drawn from the outside, felt like a declaration of war. Whoever took it had been close. Too close. He moved through the house with military precision, double-checking every lock, every blind, every doorframe. When he reached the back door, he noticed something he'd missed earlier. A faint smear of mud on the handle, shaped like the side of a thumb. The soil was still wet. Fresh. Ethan's pulse slowed, his mind narrowing to the cold focus of a mission. He grabbed his duffel, opening the compartment he hadn't touched since deployment. A small, hardened case with a suppressed sidearm, 2 spare magazines, and a compact flashlight. He loaded the weapon calmly, every motion practiced and silent. Amber appeared at the edge of the hallway, her face pale and frightened. "Ethan, what are you doing?" He didn't look at her. "Someone's been here." Her voice trembled. "Trent's gone. He can't. He can." Ethan said, his tone clipped. "Marcus said the transfer failed. The van was found empty. He's out." Amber's knees weakened. "Oh my God. He's coming here." Ethan glanced at her finally. He already did. He held up the photograph. "He left this on the porch." Amber covered her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. "What are we going to do?" "You're going to stay upstairs with Lily," he said. "Lock the door. Don't come out until I say it's safe. I'm not leaving you down here." "Amber," he said sharply. "He's not here for you. He's here for me. And I'm not letting him near her again." She hesitated, then nodded shakily and went upstairs. Ethan listened to the click of Lily's door lock before turning off the living room light. The darkness wrapped around him like an old uniform. He waited. 5 minutes. 10. The house groaned under the weight of wind. The clock on the wall ticked softly, each second tightening the air. Then footsteps outside. Soft, deliberate, circling the side of the house. A faint metallic rattle followed, like fingers testing a window latch. Ethan crouched near the kitchen entryway, weapon low, breath steady. The sound moved closer to the back door. The handle turned once, slowly, then again. He didn't move. The third time, the door creaked open an inch. A shadow slipped inside, faint against the low light bleeding from the window. Heavy boots, controlled breathing. Trent. He looked different, rougher, thinner, but the grin was the same. "You've got good security, soldier," he whispered into the dark. "But not good enough." Ethan raised his weapon slightly. "You shouldn't have come back." Trent froze for a split second, then chuckled. "Had to. We had unfinished business. You took something from me. You took everything from her." Ethan said. "That's not business. That's a crime." Trent's smile twisted. "You think I'm scared of you? You think anyone's going to believe a PTSD daddy killed a man breaking into his own house?" Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he pressed a small button on the wall behind him, hidden near the frame. The faint click of a concealed latch sounded upstairs. Trent frowned. "What was that?" "Insurance," Ethan said. Before Trent could react, a red targeting laser bloomed across his chest. He looked down in confusion, then toward the window, where a faint glint of metal caught the moonlight. A suppressed crack split the air. The shot wasn't fatal. Marcus never missed, but precise enough to knock Trent backward into the wall, the pistol he hadn't yet drawn clattering to the floor. Ethan moved instantly, kicking the weapon away and pinning him with a knee to the shoulder. "You had your chance to disappear," he said through clenched teeth. Trent laughed, blood at the corner of his mouth. "You don't get it. You're already part of it. The people who got me out, they wanted you." Ethan froze. "What are you talking about?" Trent coughed, smirking. "You think this was random? They wanted proof a decorated vet would cross the line for family. Congratulations, you just gave it to them." Outside, another engine started, quiet, distant. The sound of an SUV pulling away. Ethan glanced toward the window, realization dawning. The extraction wasn't for Trent. It was for the data. The operation wasn't cleanup. It was bait. He turned back, but Trent was already laughing, eyes glassy with pain. "They're watching you, soldier." Always have been. Ethan's hand trembled for a fraction of a second before he steadied it. Then they'll see what happens when they cross a father. Marcus's voice came faintly through the earpiece Ethan hadn't realized was still connected. Cole, stand down. We've got surveillance confirmation. Do not engage further. Ethan stared at Trent, then holstered his weapon slowly. Copy, he said, voice hard. The front door burst open moments later, Marcus himself leading 2 agents in black gear. They swept through, secured Trent, and nodded at Ethan. You did good, Marcus said, eyes heavy with unspoken apology. We didn't know it was bigger than him. Ethan's gaze flicked to the broken door, then to the photograph still crumpled in his hand. You'd better finish it this time, he said. Marcus nodded. This time we will. As the agents dragged Trent outside, the sky broke open again, rain falling hard and fast. Ethan stood in the doorway, letting the storm soak through his shirt. Upstairs, Lily stirred, her small voice calling, Daddy. He looked up, forcing calm into his tone. It's okay, baby. Everything's okay now. But deep down, he knew that was a lie. The man was gone, but the war had just changed shape. And this time, it wasn't just about his family. It was about the truth. The storm burned itself out by dawn. A weak sun filtered through the dripping trees, turning puddles on the street into dull mirrors. Inside, the house felt like a war zone after cleanup, quiet but scarred. Bullet fragments glinted on the tile near the kitchen wall. A cracked picture frame lay face down on the floor. Ethan stood in the living room, barefoot, staring at the streak of blood where Trent had fallen. He hadn't cleaned it yet. Part of him needed to see it, to remind himself that it was real, that this nightmare had finally stepped into daylight. A knock came at the door, 2 short, 1 long. Marcus's pattern. Ethan opened it, finding him there in the same plain jacket as before, his face drawn and weary. Behind him, an unmarked SUV idled at the curb. Morning, Cole, Marcus said, voice rough. Ethan stepped aside. You couldn't call? Not for this, Marcus said, closing the door behind him. Mind if we sit? Ethan gestured to the couch. Go ahead. Marcus scanned the room with a soldier's eye, cataloging damage automatically. He didn't get upstairs. No, Ethan said. He didn't get the chance. Marcus nodded slowly. Good. He set a sealed folder on the table. I need to tell you what we know. Off record. Ethan crossed his arms. I'm listening. Marcus took a breath. The group that broke Trent out wasn't working for him. They were testing us. Testing you. Someone high up wanted to know what happens when a decorated soldier's pushed to the edge, whether he'd stay lawful or go rogue. Ethan frowned. You're telling me this was planned? Parts of it, yeah, Marcus said. They leaked his transfer route, waited for you to react, monitored everything from satellites and comm taps. When you made the call to me, that sealed it. They had their variable. Real combat reaction, family stakes, full moral pressure. Ethan stared at him, disbelief turning to anger. So they used my daughter as an experiment? Marcus didn't deny it. They used all of us. But the operation's burned now. Too many red flags. The brass is pretending it never existed. Ethan clenched his fists. And Trent. Marcus's gaze darkened. He's gone. For good this time. Gone as in prison. Or, Marcus met his eyes. Gone. Silence filled the room. The refrigerator hummed softly, the sound oddly human in the stillness. Ethan sat down slowly. So that's it. You walk in here, tell me I was bait, and expect me to just go back to breakfast? No, Marcus said. I came to say you did the right thing. You kept her safe. Whatever they were measuring, you proved one thing they can't replicate. Discipline with heart. They expected rage. You gave them restraint. Ethan let out a short, humorless laugh. Feels like restraint. He glanced at the stain on the floor. Tell that to the part of me that wanted him dead. Marcus leaned forward. You think I don't get that? We've all got that line. But you didn't cross it, and that's what makes you dangerous in the right way. Ethan shook his head. I'm not interested in being their weapon again. You won't have to be, Marcus said. He slid the folder across the table. Inside's everything we could salvage. Photos, reports, comm logs. If anyone ever comes asking about last night, you hand them this. It tells the version that keeps your name clean. Ethan didn't touch it. And if I want the truth instead, Marcus sighed. Then you disappear. But if you do, they'll come looking. Not for revenge, for control. You're proof their theory worked too well. Upstairs, Lily's footsteps thudded softly across the floorboards. Marcus glanced up, then back at him. She's strong, that kid. Looks like you when you're thinking. Ethan managed a faint smile. She deserves peace. Real peace. Marcus stood. Then take it while you can. He paused at the door, one hand on the knob. They'll close this out in a week. After that, you're free. But if anything feels off, any strange calls, anyone asking questions, burn the phone and reach me the old way. The old way, Ethan repeated quietly. Still remember the frequency. Marcus nodded once. Good. He hesitated, then said, You did right by her, Ethan. Don't let guilt convince you otherwise. He left without another word. The SUV gliding away into the wet morning. Ethan stood there for a long moment, staring at the folder on the table. He finally opened it. Inside were grainy surveillance photos, Trent in custody, Trent outside the house, even one of Ethan himself standing by the basement door the night he returned. At the bottom was a single typed sentence stamped in red. Subject demonstrated containment under extreme emotional duress. Recommend observation suspended indefinitely. Ethan read it twice, then closed the folder and fed it into the fireplace. The paper curled and blackened until nothing remained but ash. Amber stepped into the doorway, her voice tentative. Was that Marcus? He nodded. What did he say? Ethan looked at the fire, the smoke twisting upward like a ghost leaving the room. He said it's over. She didn't ask more. Maybe she could tell from his tone that over never really meant finished, just quiet. Lily ran down the stairs in her pajamas, holding a new drawing. Daddy, look, she said brightly. It's us at the park. He crouched to her level, studying the picture. The stick figures were smiling under a blue sky again. No red dots. No cages. It's perfect, he said, hugging her tightly. And for the first time in months, Ethan allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe it could stay that way, if only for a while. A week passed before the neighborhood began to look ordinary again. The shattered porch light was replaced, the basement cleaned, the blood on the kitchen floor scrubbed until only faint discoloration remained. From the outside, the Cole house looked healed. White curtains, a mowed lawn, a child's chalk drawings on the driveway. But inside, silence still lingered like dust. Ethan spent his mornings at the kitchen table with coffee gone cold, reading the same page of the newspaper over and over. He wasn't waiting for news. He was waiting for peace to feel real. Amber moved quietly around him, trying to fill the void with motion. Cleaning, cooking, pretending. The bruised look under her eyes hadn't faded. Lily was the only spark left. She filled the house with drawings, laughter, and small signs of safety returning. Her voice had changed, lighter, less afraid. Every evening, she would run to Ethan with another crayon story. A park, a sky, a house with 3 people, and a yellow sun. But the silence always returned after she went to bed. That Friday, as dusk settled, a letter arrived. Handwritten, no return address. The envelope bore a faint watermark Ethan recognized instantly. Department of Defense. His stomach tightened. He tore it open carefully. Inside was a single page. Captain Cole, your cooperation in recent events is noted. Effective immediately, all pending investigations have been closed. Official records will show no evidence of misconduct or involvement beyond protective action. You are advised to maintain discretion and report any unusual contact within 6 months. Thank you for your service. Office of Strategic Oversight. Ethan folded the paper neatly and slid it into the drawer with the others. One more ghost locked away. But the last line stuck with him. Report any unusual contact. That meant they still might be watching. Amber entered quietly, drying her hands with a towel. More government mail? He nodded. Just paperwork. She hesitated. Are we safe now? Ethan didn't look up. As safe as they'll let us be. She sat across from him, voice trembling. You don't sleep anymore. You walk the halls at night. You think I don't notice? I'm just making sure the locks work. You're still at war, Ethan, she whispered. And there's no battlefield left. He finally met her gaze. There's always one left. For a long time, they said nothing. The sound of the refrigerator filled the pause, a reminder that life went on even when people didn't. Later that night, after Amber went upstairs, Ethan sat by the window, watching the streetlights blink on one by one. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the ground still glistened. He glanced at the photo of Lily taped to the fridge, her smile open, real, unscarred. It was the only thing that still felt pure. Then his phone buzzed once. No caller ID. Just a text, still watching. Keep her safe. He froze. The number vanished from his screen seconds later, like the others. He stood, scanning the quiet street. Every porch looked the same. No movement, no sound. But he could feel it, that hum in the air, that instinct no soldier ever loses. He picked up the satellite phone, still hidden in the kitchen drawer, and pressed the single button pre-programmed to Marcus's channel. The static cracked before the line steadied. "Cole!" Marcus's voice sounded half asleep. "You told me it was over." "It is," Marcus said. "What happened?" "Got a message." A pause. "What did it say?" Still watching. Marcus sighed. "Ignore it. They do that sometimes, reminders. Keeps you compliant." Ethan looked out the window again. "And if they're not reminders? Then you'll handle it," Marcus said quietly. "Like you always do." The line clicked dead. Ethan set the phone down and stood there in the dark for a long time. Then he walked down the hall and stopped at Lily's door. She was asleep, her drawings taped all over the walls, a child's world rebuilt from color. He watched her for a moment, the slow rhythm of her breathing steadying his own. He whispered, "They'll never touch you again." Back in the kitchen, he opened the drawer, took out the government letter, and fed it into the fireplace. The paper curled, the ink blistering into black flakes. He tossed the satellite phone in after it, watching the flames eat both symbols of control. Outside, thunder rolled again in the far distance, gentle this time, like a reminder rather than a threat. Amber came downstairs, hair tousled from sleep. "What you doing?" Ethan looked at the fire. "Ending it." She frowned. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "Yeah. Whatever happens now, it's on our terms." She stepped closer, the flickering light reflecting in her eyes. "Do you think they'll come back?" "If they do," he said softly, "they'll find a soldier waiting." Amber hesitated, then slipped her hand into his. For the first time in months, he didn't pull away. The fire burned low, glowing in the quiet. Upstairs, Lily stirred, murmuring in her sleep, and outside, the wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of rain. Ethan looked toward the window, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. For now, they were safe. But deep down, he knew what peace really was. Not the absence of war, just the calm between battles.